Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, which introduces the Mercia SRA cloud-based audit template. My name is Georgie Walker and I'm the training manager here at CaseWare UK. And today I'm joined by my colleagues Matt Swan, the product owner for Smart Engagement, and Dennis Derman, content writer. Before I hand over to Matt to start the presentation, there are a couple of housekeeping items to run through. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the questions section on the GoToWebinar screen. These questions will be read out anonymously during the Q&A period that will happen at the end of the webinar. If you would like to ask a live question during the Q&A period, please use the hand raising button in your control panel. And then when we get to the Q&A period, attendees will be unmuted and introduced one at a time, and then you can ask your question. And then, depending on the number of questions submitted during this webinar, we may also publish a list of the questions and answers along with the recording on the CaseWare knowledge base. So, Matt, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Georgie. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to be running through the Smart Engagement. So, as a starting point, just to run through the agenda for this afternoon's session, I'm going to first of all run through the introduction to what Smart Engagement actually is. Those of you that have sat in on the HAT SRA webinars will probably have seen this element before, but it's worth just as a refresher what it is we're doing within Smart Engagement and what it is that Smart Engagement is trying to achieve. We'll also run through an introduction to the Mercia SRA template just to give people a heads up on what to expect within the actual template with regards to the feature sets that are available to you and how to access and start navigating your way around the actual software. To start off with, we need to look at what Smart Engagement is. Smart Engagement is CaseWare's cloud engagement platform. So this will allow us to actually go through and set up pure cloud-based templates. Now, the actual engagement platforms, SE, is based around our practice management or Collaborate, which integrates with our practice management system. This will allow us to run through progress monitoring across all of our engagements. It allows client collaboration through prepared by client or a query, but it also provides us with one-source content. So we can put the content information into one area and we can use that information and recycle it constantly in our different templates. Within Smart Engagement, it will allow us to have audit functionality, go through and prepare financial statements, as well as having the audit functionality and financial statements options. What we'll also be providing is integration with our corporation tax product, which will be released next year at some stage, or alternatively our personal tax products as well. So we'll be integrating completely across the board from our audit through to taxation. And what will eventually be arising as well will be an integration with our analytics tool. So all of that will be incorporated within Smart Engagement. So the Smart Engagement element is just one place that we can go through, focus on integration with absolutely everything, and that will feed through so we can start progress monitoring all of our clients all in one place. So that's Smart Engagement, but just to give you an idea of what Smart Engagement looks like and what we're actually running through, I'm just going to go through and go into a Smart Engagement or into the cloud so people can see how that all works. So when I access the cloud, what I'll be coming into is my entity screen. So if I use the menu from the top left-hand corner, what I'll be able to see is a list of the standard information that you'll see within your cloud firm. And then if I scroll down a little bit, what we'll also be able to see are any Smart Engagement applications that have been purchased by your firm or are in trial by your firm. If I was to select my Mercia SRA, it will open up my Mercia SRA screen, and this provides a list of all of the current engagements that have been created using the Mercia SRA template. If I look at this, I can click on any of these and just access them directly from this particular list. A better way of actually viewing this information though is by going through and actually using the engagements panel. Now this engagements panel is going to be made more active and give people the ability to use it as a startup screen for the cloud in a later version of the cloud. I think it's Cloud 28 that will become more available as our default starting position. And as a default starting position, it will allow us to start tracking where we are with particular engagement files. This gives us a list of all of my engagement files, regardless of whether it's a Mercia SRA, HAT SRA, or it could be working papers. So we can actually link this to our working papers as well. What this will do is it will give us the ability to start tracking whereabouts we are with each individual file. Now at the moment I'm showing up just my work, but I could see all of the work available to individuals. So this is all of the work going on within my firm, and this is the work associated to me. If I select one of my files, what I'll be able to do is have a snapshot of where I am with this particular file at this particular moment in time. So I can see that my completion is in progress for this particular entity. I can see that it's a UK Mercia SRA file. The other information that I'll get is it gives me a document status, so I can see that I've got 23 documents that have been reviewed at this stage, but I'm still waiting to prepare 5 documents. It will give me a breakdown of how much time has been spent if I'm using CaseWare's Cloud's time and billing option, and it will actually go through and give me how much has been billed as well, so I can start seeing that compared to budget. It will also provide me a list of any outstanding issues, so I can start tracking my work to make sure that if I have any issues on the file, if they're still outstanding, what I need to do with them. If I just close this screen down, you can see here we've got the number of issues that are still outstanding showing up down the right hand side. So that gives you a nice snapshot of where we are at any one stage. Now if I create a new file, it will give us the ability to select which entity do we want to put this file to, the name of the engagement file, so in this instance I'll go with CMA LLP 2018. We need to select the year. Please don't be misled by the terminology at this stage. The Smart Engagement platform is based around an agile development process, so they are constantly updating it. The year is a little bit misleading. Really, it should be year 1 that should be referenced to. So that's our initial period or the initial time of creating the file. If I move down, the carry forward data, because I'm using year 1, is actually locked, so we can't carry anything forward from a previous file. But we've got elements here for start date and end date. And again, this will provide us a bit more information as far as the tracking is concerned, where we're going with regards to the starting of the audit and when we're planning to actually finish the audit. So this isn't your year-end dates, this is actually the work progress dates. We can insert our budget hours. Now we don't have to, but this aids our engagement pane, and we can go through and enter a preparer. So it's the preparer that will actually allow us, and the reviewer, sorry, that will actually allow us to go through and select out my work rather than having to see all of the work that's actually in our engagements pane. It's a much better way of being able to filter through which work we're looking at. Now, once I've gone through and inserted that information, if I click onto save, it will go through, create the file based on our templates, and we'll get a new window or new tab showing up at the very top of our window. He says. There we go. So once we get our new tab showing up, this will open up our engagement properties window. So it's very similar to the desktop version where we get things like our operating name and year-end date. Information such as registered office is being pulled directly from Collaborate, and this is the one source process. So if we put information in once within our entity within Collaborate for our address, all of that information will filter through into the relevant areas within our Smart Engagement file. The job number, that's an optional filter, but we could go through and put in just a job number should we want to. The operating name is again coming directly from Collaborate, that one source system. The year-end date, that's part of the template. However, we can go through and change that by selecting our calendar control picker, and we can actually move that on should we need to. So we can change the year-end date at any stage. This window will also provide us with a little workflow showing up down the left-hand side. Now the workflow is a semi-automated workflow. Some of this element will move on automatically. There are other elements or other elements of the workflow that we will need to go through and actually manually move on. So for the initial appointment accepted, that's our starting point. When we go to pre-planning sent, that can all be linked with our prepared by client or query within Smart Engagement. What this window will also provide us is the ability to set a second reviewer or a second or independent reporting accountant. So we can go through and set that up. Once we have set a second reviewer, that isn't reversible, so it will be set up for the rest of the file or the life cycle of this particular file. We can also lock down files to make them a read-only version. Again, locking it down would actually mean it's unchangeable or puts it into a read-only format. If I click on to save, that'll just close down that engagement property. If I need to re-access it at any time, I simply click on the name of the engagement and it will go through and reopen it up again. So I can actually I can set my second reviewer at any stage if we decide there is something that's changed about this file from year to year. Once I've closed down the window, we're faced directly with our document manager. Now, as a starting point for our document manager, we have our little navigation pane going across the top. So when we're looking at our navigation pane, the first icon that we come to is an Issues button. That Issues button will allow us to go through and generate an issue for the engagement as a whole. We can generate issues in 3 different areas. We can generate an issue for the engagement as a whole. I can hover over a particular document and I can create an issue at document level, or I can go into a particular document and hovering over a procedure, I can go through and raise an issue at a procedure level. And I'll show you that in a little bit more detail later on. But when we're in documents, we can also raise them at document level within the actual documents as well. So we don't have to keep jumping about from document to document or from screen to screen in order to raise an issue. Once I'm in a particular document, if I want to get back to my document manager, or if I want to get to a particular specific document, I can either use my Documents button at the very top, and that will take me back to my document manager. Alternatively, I can use my document map, and I can scroll down and access a particular document from my document map to save me, again, having to jump from screen to screen. All of it should be a one-click option. As soon as I go back to my document manager though, what I'll be able to see at the very top are the recent documents that I've accessed, and that will again give me a shortcut to save me hunting around for those. So if I'm working on a couple of documents, rather than jumping around too much, I'll be able to click on one of them and it will take me straight into it. Now the document manager will also give us on the document search the ability to go through and find documents relatively quickly. So I can type in the search risk and that will show up those documents with risk in the title. Now, in the next version of the Smart Engagement platform, which should be released at the back end of this month, what we'll be able to do is actually search within documents from this search function for particular words. So if I was looking for risk, if it showed up risk within any of my actual checklists, it would open up my checklist and take me directly to that particular area. So the search function is becoming a lot more intelligent as we work our way through, and that will be provided for not just the Smart Engagement documents, but it will also work on PDF documents that have been inserted into our document manager. The final button within our navigation is our Issues button, and that Issues button will go through and provide a summary of all of our issues that have been generated within this engagement. It will be able to provide a screen that will give us a breakdown per the issue type, but it will also give us a breakdown and filter area for the actual status of the issue. So we can see whether they've been responded or if they've been cleared or if they're still in progress. So we'll be able to work our way through there. Now, just under the navigation toolbar, what you'll be able to see is our document manager. And our document manager is separated into 3 distinct areas. Now, on my screen at the moment, because I'm using my laptop and it's slightly smaller, we don't get to see how the flow works. But if I just minimize my screen, if you're using a monitor, what you'll be able to see, we've got our 3 distinct workflow phases. So the first instance shows up, or the first column shows up our permanent file and planning. The second column will show up our work programs or field work, and then finally we move on into our completion section. So we've got those 3 distinct work areas. If I scroll down a little bit further, we also have a little bit of guidance. We give you the Mercia guidance notes along with the template guidance, which I'll show you towards the end of this session. When we're looking at these particular areas, I'm just going to maximize my screen to make it a bit easier for people to see. When we look at particular areas, what we'll be able to see are blue folders within each of these workflow sections. These will allow us to go through and collapse these particular folders. So if you know you're working on the permanent file and you don't want the rest of the clutter, we can start closing information request and tailoring by left clicking on it, and we can just open up that file that's actually relevant as far as our work is concerned. So all of these are collapsible headers as we work our way through here. At the top of each of our workflow sections, we'll also see a progress indicator. This progress indicator will start moving as soon as we sign things off as reviewed. So it doesn't get affected by or prepared by, it's purely from a reviewed by status. The rest of the information, if you wish to see how many documents have been prepared, we can use our engagements pane for that instance. Hovering over each of these documents, what you'll see are a number of different icons available to us. So if I hover over a particular document, I can see here, as I mentioned earlier, the Issues button. That Issues button would create an issue for the document as a whole. The three dotted button to the right of that allows us to go through and reorder this particular phase. So I can go through and move a document up or down or into a different folder if I needed to. So if I brought in a PDF document or an Excel document, I can start moving those into different folders and reordering those as I move my way through. And finally, we have an option for Save to Cloud. So in my covering letter, for example, for engagement letter, if I was to left click and select Save to Cloud, this would actually go through and save a copy of my engagement letter down into my engagement within the cloud. So I've got a PDF version of that sitting on my cloud entity within files. Finally, we've got a visibility icon. Now this visibility icon will allow us to go through and hide documents that aren't relevant for this particular client. So if, for example, I'm not using Smart Engagement to send my engagement letters, I can go through and decide, well, my covering letter isn't relevant, therefore I can left click on the visibility icon and I can hide that. I can do that not just for letters, but I can do it for checklists as well if I needed to. And that will allow me to hide it without deleting the content. So if anything does change within this entity, I can easily restore it. So if I select hide in this instance, PF3 gets removed. In order to bring that back through onto the face of my document manager, in the top right hand corner, I can show my hidden items. And as you can see, risk analysis is still there available for me to reinsert into my file. And to reinstate that, it's a simple case of clicking onto the icon and adding it back in by selecting show. The software won't allow users to delete any of our template content. It will only allow users to remove it from view. That way, if anything does get deleted or removed from view, it's easily reinstated back into the file. Content that users have gone through, however, and inserted from their own will actually allow or will be deletable. So users can go through and delete that should they need to. Now the starting point for the smart engagement or the solicitors rules for Mercia is our information request. So if we start at the top of the planning, the way that the template has been set up, it should have been set up really as a workflow. So if you work from the top of your left-hand side all the way through to the bottom of the left-hand side, you can then filter across from left to right, top to bottom. So if I was to look at the information request from the client, this is our prepared by client document. So this is our query. Now the query function is a really powerful tool, and this will allow us to go through and request information from our clients without us having to send emails backwards and forwards or anything coming to us in the post. So when we open up our engagement or information request, we have a little guidance section at the very top. This is fully tailorable by you as the accountant or auditor to send to our solicitor client. So we can go through and tailor this. Now as a starting point, the query opens up in draft format, and this allows us just to review the sort of information we're requesting from our client. All of this, as well as the guidance, is fully tailorable. So if there are questions in here that you think aren't relevant as far as our audit file is concerned for this particular solicitor, we can go through and start removing information. So where we've got please review and sign the attached letter of engagement, if we're not sending out an updated engagement letter, we can simply go through and hide that engagement letter. So we can go through and hide that information because it's just not relevant. If we note that some questions are being asked in a format that we wouldn't use generally with a particular client, we can go through and using the edit button, we can start changing this information. So if we know that something has changed or we don't want to actually incorporate further information, we can go through and start deleting information out, or we can add further information into here should we need to. So we can start building that information in as we work our way through. Now, what you'll see within the query document are a number of different response types. So in this instance, question number 1 gives us a manual response type. So that's expecting the client to go through and manually type in information into this field. Question number 2, however, is asking for a document to be uploaded. So this is a document request, and this will allow us to receive information directly from the client that will actually insert it directly into our document manager. So we don't have to worry about putting it into our document manager. That will already be inserted, and generally it will be inserted into the relevant areas for us. Just underneath that, question 3, we can see here we've got yes, no answers. So this will allow the client just to have a simple one-click answer rather than having to go through and type. So there's a number of different response types that we can provide for clients. Scrolling down, you can see there's a number of questions already pre-set up. If you know some of these actually in advance and you feel it's not worthy of asking, you can go through and you can hide those questions if you needed to, just by hovering over the visibility icon over on the right hand side. If I come down to a couple of questions, I can see here questions 17, 18. These are already set up with document requests. So I can see the document request, but underneath these questions, I can also see whereabouts that document would be situated within my document manager before receiving it. So in this instance, I can see that it would go to our bank reconciliation section on our document manager, section C, and it would come in pre-referenced with C2. If there is already a C2 on your document manager, it would come in as C2.01. These can be re-referenced should the users wish to. Just to show you on our document manager though, within our document manager, we purely have C1 as a starting point. Even showing up the hidden items, C2 just does not exist as a starting point. That's absolutely fine. The client information request will generate that reference as we go through and put the information in. Now, as well as having the standard wording questions or standard worded requests, we can also go through and insert our own information request. So if I decide that I want to ask a further question, I can click on the edit button, add a new procedure, and put in my new procedure. So this is a new request. I can put in my new request, and by default what I'll see coming through is it will be a document upload option. So the document upload, if it's a particular document that I'm requesting, I can leave it as a document upload, but I can start linking this to different folders or different areas within my document manager. So if this is an assistance to your planning, or if it's going into your permanent file, we can simply click on our target folder and select we wish it to go to our permanent file, and we can then go through and select the identifier we wish that to have as we build our audit file. If I decide that I don't want to ask for a particular document, I can actually go through and change this from an upload request, and I can change the response. So rather than having upload files, we can change this to being a manual response where we ask clients just to insert text, or alternatively, we can make it a pick list, and a pick list will allow us just to select one of these options. Now, we're not restricted to just yes, no, or not applicable. We can go through and edit this and actually build in our own pick list if we wish to. So we can go through and start building in options in here where we can actually provide a number of different choices for the client to go through and select. For this instance, I'm going to make this one a manual, and I'm going to put in insert text here. If I click on save, that will then go through and create my new document. Now, with regards to my new document, it might be that this is actually a more relevant question as far as this solicitor is concerned, so I want it to be a bit further up. And if I wish to move it further up, I click on the 3 buttons and select move. This will then allow me to go through and move it further up the list, depending on whereabouts I want to put it in. So if it's coming in a more suitable position, that's absolutely fine, you can move that, but by default it gets added to the bottom of our information request. Now the final thing is, once I've moved it around, I can decide, does this question actually relate to a particular question in one of my checklists? If it does, I can link this to a checklist, by clicking on link to checklist and going through selecting out which checklist it relates to. And not only which checklist does this relate to, but if there's a particular question that it will aid me within my planning or within my completion section or the fieldwork, I can go through and link it to a particular procedure. So it will just go through and give us the ability to actually link to that further finite detail. If I click on save at this instance, that will then go through and link it automatically for me. Now, once I've made adjustments to my information request from the client, I can change the status of the information request from draft to open. And what that will do is it will provide me the ability to go through and insert a query due date. So if I wanted the query to be responded to by tomorrow, I can select tomorrow's date. I can decide which of my client as the auditor do I want to send this to. So all of these are contacts that have been set up within my solicitor's firm in Collaborate. If I remove the tick, I can go through and select which of my solicitor clients do I want to send this to or contacts within CMA. So I can select multiple, I can select one. It's entirely up to me how many I select. So in this instance, I'm going to select 2 contacts. I can create more contacts on the fly if I needed to, and this will take me back into Collaborate, and I can go through the whole process of creating contacts. And then in my email body, I can put my message in, so please complete the attached. If I select OK, what that will do is it will change the status of my query from draft to open. It will also go through on my workflow and push my appointed accepted straight through to pre-planning sent. So again, all of that information will get kicked in automatically for us. So once we've actually got that in position, what we'll be able to do is go through and show you how the view would be from our client's perspective. So from our client's perspective, what we're looking at here is we've got our email coming through from the CaseWare Cloud. So this is from the solicitor's perspective. If I open up CaseWare Cloud, I can see here an activity has been emailed to you. So it doesn't give us any information with regards to any confidential information. It doesn't ask us to insert any information into this particular email, so nothing can get lost. All it does is gives us the body of the, or the text that we wish to show in the body of the email, and a button for view details. Now, as the solicitor, I'm going to click on view details. Sign into the cloud. And what I'd see from the solicitor's perspective is purely the query showing up. I won't be able to go through and access any of the audit documents or any of the audit questions, work programs that have been set up from the auditor's perspective. It's purely showing up just that one information request. Now, scrolling through here, I can go through here and put in any changes. I can start putting information in. I can put comments in to say this isn't clear. And I can insert my comment, and it tells me actually who's created the comment and the date and time in which the comment was created. So I can start having a two-way conversation with my auditor should I need to by using the comment, and that won't filter onto any work programs. That's just purely there in the query, just if there was any questions on what's being asked at any one time. Now, if I look at these particular queries, I can see here that I've got my option for my new request. So I can go put in, this is my response. And once I've got that information inserted, I can actually sign this off as the solicitor to say, well, that's the only one I needed to do. Ned's going to do everything else. So I'm going to mark my bit as responded. Ned can go through and finish off the rest of this. But while I'm in here, it might be that I've got my bank reconciliations or my list of clients to hand. So if I wish to actually put this information onto my document manager, what I'm going to do is I've got my bank account details, so my client account details, and I'm just going to drag and drop that in. And what you'll see is it will go through and upload that onto my query. Same with my list of clients. If I wish to drop that in, I can go through and just drag and drop that in. If I put in, please see attached. I'll do the same for this one as well. I can then sign these elements off as well to say I'm happy that I've gone through and added that information in. So as Matilda Signet, I've gone through and answered those questions which are relevant to me. What you'll see is by dropping on those particular documents, my document manager isn't automatically populated with that information as our starting point. So I can't see my client reconciliations coming through. Not that I think I dropped one in anyway. But that would actually go through and populate it. At the moment, the information requested from client, nothing's actually changed on that. But if I was to open it up, what I'll be able to see is I've got some example responses and some responses going through just due to the fact that Ned's actually answering this potentially at the same time as I'm looking through it. As the auditor though, I can see in here things that have been signed off, and it will give me a little drop down button in order to go through, and I can start accepting or declining individual responses to file requests. If I was to see a file request in here and I wanted to actually view it before accepting it, I can click onto my client matter listing and I'll be able to see a copy of my client matter listing as my starting point. So that's before it gets into smart engagement. However, if I'm happy that that's the information I want, I'm going to accept that individual element, and that signs off that particular query. Now, if I click onto my client matter listing, in this instance, it opens it up within smart engagement. And if it's opened within smart engagement, this is where I can start adding annotations. So if we're dropping PDFs in, we can go through, add in annotations, and this will allow us to go through, agree to source, and we can start getting our cross-referencing in using smart engagement as our starting point. Now, if I come back out to my document manager, I can see here that we've got our workflows being progressed. I would have received an email to say an activity has been updated, or a smart engagement file has been updated. Click here to see the updates, and what it will do is it will provide me with a direct link to this particular engagement. Now on this engagement, I can start seeing now that my information requested from the client has been updated, and so I can see my blue pencil showing up on the left hand side, and I can also see from my workflow that my pre-planning has been returned. So when I'm looking at my information request from the client, I can now start seeing that everything's been responded to. If I'm happy with each individual one, as you saw earlier, I can accept them on a one-by-one basis. Alternatively, I can go through and answer this all in one go. So I can either reopen the query if the client hasn't actually responded to nearly half as much of the information as has been requested, or I can mark this as completed. So in this instance, I'm going to set this one as complete, but before I do that, I'm just going to drop a document into my client reconciliation file. So let's just drag one in here. I'm going to mark this one as complete. Now, as soon as you select marking as complete, what you'll be able to see is the query shows up to say, once you've completed your query, you can't do any other work within this particular query. So if I select proceed, it locks it down completely, and this is no longer editable. All it will do is it will provide the information or show the information that's been provided by the client. If we need to raise any further questions for our contacts, for the solicitor, we'd need to go through the whole process from our document manager, and we'd be able to actually generate a brand new query by clicking in the relevant folder on the plus, and we can select query, and that will give us a blank query that we can go through and start setting up those sort of extra questions that we needed to ask. Now, once I've actually accepted a query and signed it off as confirmed and completed, what we'll start seeing are documents filtering onto our document manager as we work our way through here. So we can see we now have a C2 showing up on our document manager already populated. So that's the query function. Looking at some of the actual work or checklists within the software, what we'll be able to see is we've got a number of different folders or documents showing up within our document manager. So looking at one of these particular documents, if I was to use our PF21, we have our control systems and procedures. Now, looking within our control systems and procedures, within each checklist type document, we have two different tabs. One of them provides the actual procedures, the actual work we need to go through and complete. The other one gives us access to the guidance for this particular document. And this guidance is based around the Mercia work programs within Word, sorry. That's all linked in. It will also provide any hyperlinks. So if I select our accounts rules, this will take us directly to the SRA website and provide a link to our accounts rules. Unfortunately, the SRA website does seem a little bit slow on my machine. If I come back to the Procedures tab, there you go, there's our SRE handbook opened up as a separate tab. If I come back to the Procedures tab, what we'll be able to see is the Procedures tab will give us little headings as we work our way through here. So if I was looking at the overview of the accounts function, I could go through and update this information. So I can put in my systems notes and put that information in. If I note that there are any deficiencies, or if I don't, if I select no for my overview of the accounts function, see that there's no deficiencies, that's fine. I can move on to the next question and receipts. If I'm not interested in viewing this information anymore, I click on the blue header and that will collapse that particular header for me. I can go through and put in the systems notes for the receipts section. If I haven't got the systems notes, I could actually attach them to my document manager and I can start cross-referencing these. So I can add an annotation. If I have my systems notes on, I can go through and link those across. So I can put the purpose and goes to, and people will be able to see my systems notes. So I don't have to duplicate that information within Smart Engagement. I can use the information that's already available to me. If in this instance, though, there are deficiencies that have been noted within the internal controls, if I select yes, it will then ask me what were the deficiencies, whether it's material or significant, and my rationale for the decision. So this is my reason, and I can start inserting that information. Now, what that will do is it will feed all the way through. As you can see here, there's a link over on the right-hand side to our A27 document. So it'll go through and push it all through to our summary or schedule of breaches. We'll come back to this as and when we get to the completion section moving through. If I was to open up the PF23, I go into our risk analysis, and I can see within our risk analysis there are a number of different questions that are being shown up through here. Now within here, these are simple yes/no questions, so we can go through and answer these questions as we see fit. What we can also do is we can go through and start tailoring questions. So we can tailor questions by simply clicking on the edit button, and we can add in further information and tailor these as much as we need to, working our way through here. So I would tailor this generally before I sign it off. If there's questions that I feel aren't relevant, if I decide, well, actually question number 1 isn't relevant, we've got the same option as we have within the query function, the ability to go through and hide a particular question. We can change the responses by simply left clicking, it puts it back to its default, and we can go through and change these responses. What we'll also be able to do is we'll be able to go through and add procedures in. So I can simply add a new procedure in, and I can change this text, and I can go through and actually change the response type. So rather than yes, no, I can actually ask for a manual response depending on what I'm looking for. Now, one of the benefits of being able to tailor this is we can have it really set up and geared for our individual clients. But the important thing from the auditor's perspective is to know what's different from the template compared to this individual engagement. And in order to see that, we have this review tools. The reviewer tools will go through and flag up any changes that have been made to this file, flag up any questions that are new, any questions that have changed. So when I'm looking at this, I can start focusing really on smaller elements to this. So I can focus in just on any new questions. I can focus on modified questions and new questions, or just modified questions. And I can start seeing which questions have I switched off as the actual auditor that I don't think is relevant for this particular client. What we also have is this optimized out, and I'll show you that a little bit later. As well as having optimized out, we have a non-optimal answer. So the non-optimal answer reviewer tool will flag up those areas which will potentially heighten our risk within this audit. So we can start flagging up where there's some potential risk areas or high risk areas. So it's again just to draw the auditor's eye to it more than anything else. It's not expecting you to do anything with it, it's more flagging it for your attention. Now, if we were to go into our B11 document, what we'd be able to see from our B11 documents is it's set up in the same format. It gives us a checklist document, but in this instance, we're now asking for comments as opposed to yes/no items. So we can see here, we've got some that ask for yes/no, but we've got the flexibility to change these into comment fields. And when we're looking at this particular comment field, I can say yes to a question, no to a question, and because it's within the actual planning section, it gives us a sign off automatically. So I can see here, we have our sign off showing up. If as the auditor though, I go through and change this before or after my actual my response, I can go through and review any items that have changed since I've responded to them. So I can see in this instance that I've changed a response to a particular question. What we can also see from this particular document is it gives us our queries. So I can see here, this is my one of the questions that I've raised in my query, and this is my response. So I can actually use this response to aid my planning within this particular file. So it would give us the ability to copy and paste this in if we needed to. It won't automatically drop that information in purely because you might need to update the wording, and we don't want users to think that it's already been responded to. Once that's in there, we can sign that off just by using the tick over on the right hand side. Once I've signed off all 6 questions within this top section, what will happen is when I come out of the document and re-access it, this will come through in the collapsed format. And so we can see a tick up here to say all questions have been answered. At the very bottom of this document, we'll be able to see our conclusion section, and this will allow us to go through, type in our conclusion, and our RA can sign this one off. We can select the RA status, and we can select sign off. Please note this sign off is purely for the conclusion. It doesn't relate to the document. The documents are signed off in the top right hand corner using our sign off options. Once I've signed something off, you can see on our document manager, it shows up as signed off. If I wish to see a bit more information though as to who signed it off and what document type I'm looking at, I can see a detailed view, and this will go through, gives us a checklist format along with our signatories. We have gone through and put in a risk assessment section. The risk assessment section will allow us to go through and just highlight those key areas of risk within this assignment. So we can go through and indicate those relatively quickly. It will also give us a conclusion at the bottom and give us the ability to state whether our risk on this audit is low, medium or high. Sitting in our overall plan, we've got a number of different elements set up, and one of those is the actual programs to be used. By default, C1 and D1 will be switched on. If users wish to have E1 showing up the work program, we simply click on yes. If you're unsure about why E1 should be used, if I use the light bulb, we can have guidance next to an individual procedure, and this will go through and flag up any information that you need as far as a bit of assistance is concerned. Moving on into our actual work programs, if I look at the work programs, what we'll be able to see is this is set up in the same manner as the B11, so we can go through and insert our comments. We have our authoritative references kicking in, so I can see Rule 29. By clicking on the authoritative reference, this will take us to Rule 29, and it will actually show us up on the SRA website. So as you can see, Rule 29 directly in here, and we can see Rule 29.12 shows up for us. If I was to come down to the bottom, what we'll be able to see at the very bottom is we have our conclusion section, and within the conclusion section we have our weaknesses and breaches. So when we're looking at the weaknesses and breaches, we can see here that if there's been no weaknesses noted, I can simply select that, and that's the end of that particular question. If, however, I change my response to we have actually noted weaknesses, we can go through, select there are weaknesses, and we can start inserting information regarding that weakness. The same will occur with our breaches as well. So we've got breaches and the weaknesses, and that will come up in the same table. So I can put in, this is my breach. We can mark whether it's material or significant, same as we did previously on the controls checklist, and we can put in, this is the reason behind it. So we can start putting in our information for our breach or our weakness. Now, once I've started going through filling out this information, you can see the last question is, as a result of the testing, the B32 risk assessment has been revisited and re-amended or has not been amended. So we can go through and start finishing that off quite nicely. If you wish to go back to the B32, you have got the option to jump to your B32 document. Now, if I've got a breach, the A27 will flag up for me and I can jump to our schedule of breaches. Now, the schedule of breaches is just really the ability for the user to go through or the auditor to go through and just finalize the breaches, but it just captures all of those breaches in one document. This will allow us to go through, complete this and bring it to the RA's attention. So in this instance, you can see here that our PF21 document shows up a control and systems, and we can see it came from the receipts area. If it had come from the payments area, it would show up a separate section underneath it. So we can see what our weakness was. So this is all text coming directly from the P21. I can state whether something, if it's material, if it's been noted in the accountant's report or not, and whether it's been reported to the client. So I can finish off this little bit of information as far as this is concerned. So we can go through and fill out information as much as we need to. Now at the moment, the rest of the rows will show up within here. We are looking for a future release to actually hide any non-relevant rows within section C, section D and section E as well. Section C is the last section, so if I collapse section C, you'll see that we go directly into our conclusion. If you had found any issues with regards to E or section D, that would come through as well and show up as a separate area. Now, once we've got that information in place, as far as the RA is concerned, we can go directly into a summary schedule of breaches, and this will provide us that information nicely in one particular document. So I can see here all of that information that I've filled out on the A27 will filter into here, and then from the RA's point of view, I can come in and see my conclusion quite nicely and see all of those breaches that have been set up. As I said, we do have our little template information showing up down the bottom, so we can see here there's my template guidance. If I click onto template guidance, it gives you more information about what each button does as you work your way through here. If I'm dropping documents into here that have come in from the query that haven't been pre-referenced, I can simply select my move option and decide whereabouts I want to filter this into and start moving things around as well if I needed to. So all of that information can be moved as far as this template is concerned. That's everything I wanted to show you as far as the smart engagement is concerned. What I'm just going to run through just with you is just a couple of little bits, finishing off how to actually purchase this. So this will be made available for trial from next Monday, should people wish to see it. And once it's been made available for trial, what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to access it from my CaseWare. So that's through the cloud. However, if you've got any questions, you can simply ring our business development executives and they will be able to talk you through how to go through and actually access my CaseWare and actually provide or request a trial copy. It'll be available to purchase from the 18th of June. It's on a per engagement price and we're using £100 per engagement. Plus you will need a cloud license for users. So those of you that use SmartSync will already have the cloud license, so it's a pure £100 on top of that per engagement. Those of you that don't have the cloud will need to pay £10 per month per user. As far as the training options are concerned, I'm going to pass that on to our training manager, Georgie Walker. So I'm just going to pass you over to her and let her complete this little section.
Thanks, Matt. We do have a couple of training options available. We have a free quick vids and guidance that's available on our knowledge base. So hopefully you're all signed up for the knowledge base, but when you get signed up, you can do that via the client area on our website, and when you go to the quick vid option or search in there, you'll be able to access those quick vids. There's also cloud and SE guidance available within caseware.com, so you should be able to get that, and we've got the link displayed there as well. Actually, the courses that we've got available, we've got a half-day classroom style training on site, so one of our trainers can come to you and train up to 8 people, or we could do half-day online. Now, I know sometimes that's proving to be quite popular, where perhaps you don't necessarily want a trainer to come out to you for the day, or maybe you might have just 1 or 2 users who need to be trained on this. So if you do have any queries on the training options, please get in contact. We'll be glad to discuss those with you. So moving on now, having a look at that, has anyone got any questions? We're going to move to the live Q&A session now. If you'd like to ask a live question, please use the hand raising option, and then what I'll do is I'll introduce you and unmute you so that you can ask your question. If you would rather ask a question anonymously, please use the question section. We have had a couple of questions that's come in during the webinar, so I'm just going to ask that to Matt, whilst perhaps some of you might be thinking of the questions, either typing them in or using that hand raising option. So Matt, the question that's come in is, what do you do if you don't have access to Wi-Fi or lose access while working on the file?
If you don't have access to Wi-Fi, you won't be able to access it. It's pure cloud-based, unfortunately. So that is something that is going to affect people potentially. Generally, though, you'll find, hopefully, with solicitors, they've got their own Wi-Fi and guest Wi-Fi that you'll be able to access. If you lose the connection partway through, the information will be retained for you automatically. So you'll just need to re-access the internet, and you'll be able to carry on working. So you shouldn't lose any work as you work your way through it.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And so far we haven't had any other questions coming through. Some of you might be typing them into the question pane or having to think about those questions. So we'll just run through the upcoming webinars, but I'll keep an eye out for any questions that might come in and cover those off just as we go through the upcoming webinars. We've got a couple of webinars coming up, one on the 15th of June, and that's an Accounts Advanced introductory level webinar that's looking at the wizard completion, and this is in response to some feedback we've had on previous webinars that this would be a topic that some of our clients are interested in. So we're going to be looking at accessing the wizard, navigation, and completing key screens within there. And so that's sort of aimed at newer users of the Company Accounts Advanced template. And then on the 6th of July, we've got an IXBRL in Accounts Advanced. So we've got Common Tagging Errors Part 1, and this is an intermediate level webinar. And we're going to be looking at tagging review, common errors, duplicate tags, mandatory tags. So we've been liaising with our clients and finding out what queries they have, and going through a lot of our support call logs just to try and get this as relevant and covering all those key topics. This is part 1, so we will be releasing subsequent dates probably next week for part 2. So keep your eyes on the events page on our website so you can get those key dates. Okay, so we haven't had any other questions in, so that it's time probably to wrap up the webinar. So thank you very much for attending today. We hope that you found the webinar useful. We'd really appreciate it if you could fill out the feedback form that you'll be sent at the end of this webinar, and if there are any topics that you would like us to cover during any of the future broadcasts, please mention that on there. And so thank you very much for your time today, and enjoy the rest of your day.